The bet was supposed to be a joke. That's the part one keep replaying in my head, how something so stupid, so harmless, somehow turned into the moment that changed everything between me and Oliver. It started on a random Thursday night in late September. We were both 22, technically adults, but still stuck somewhere between college idiots and actual grown men. Oliver and I had been best friends since freshman year. Same dorm floor. Same sarcastic sense of humor. Same terrible taste in cheap beer. We'd always had that kind of friendship where nothing was off limits. We'd argue about anything, sports, politics, movies, and neither of us ever backed down. It was competitive, but in a fun way. At least, that's what I told myself. That night, we were sitting in his apartment, half watching some reality dating show. The kind where impossibly attractive people pretend to fall in love in 4 weeks. Oliver was stretched out on the couch, one arm behind his head, looking way too comfortable for someone who claimed he didn't care about the show. "They're faking half of this," he scoffed. "You're just mad because you'd fall in love in 3 days," I shot back. He turned his head slowly, narrowing his eyes at me. "I would not." "You absolutely would. You'd get attached to baristas if they remember your order twice. That's called being polite, Trevor. It's called having a crush." He grabbed a throw pillow and launched it at my face. I caught it laughing. This was normal for us. Easy. Familiar. Oliver had always been the confident one. Tall, broad shoulders, messy dark hair that somehow looked styled even when he'd just woken up. Girls liked him. Guys liked him. Professors liked him. He moved through the world like he expected it to make room for him. Me? I was more reserved. I blended in. I'd come out during sophomore year, and Oliver had been cool about it. Almost too cool. He'd shrugged and said, "Okay. Doesn't change anything." And it hadn't. At least, not on the surface. "You know what your problem is?" he said, sitting up now, pointing at me like he was about to make a closing argument in court. "You think everyone's secretly into everyone." "No," I said calmly. "Just you." He blinked. "Excuse me? You act like you're this untouchable straight guy, but you're the one who won't stop talking about how objectively attractive certain actors are." "That's different," he said quickly. Too quickly. I grinned. "Sure it is." There was this shift then. Subtle, but I felt it. The air got thicker. He held my gaze a second longer than usual. "You think I'd ever kiss a guy?" he asked. It should have been a throwaway line. A setup for another joke. Instead, my stomach flipped. "I don't know," I said, trying to sound casual. "Would you?" He let out a short laugh. "No." See? That hesitation. There was no hesitation. There was. He shook his head, but he was smiling now. Competitive Oliver. The one who hated losing more than anything. "Okay," he said slowly. "Bet." I frowned. "Bet what?" "You think I'd crack? That I'm secretly curious or whatever?" He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "I say I'm not. That's not really something you can prove." "Oh, I can prove it." "How?" He looked at me for a long moment. And I swear, something flickered in his expression. Not fear. Not disgust. Something closer to challenge. "One kiss," he said. My brain short-circuited. "What?" "One kiss," he repeated. "You and me. If I feel anything at all, you win. If I don't, you admit you're projecting your gay fantasies onto me and drop it forever." I laughed automatically, because that had to be a joke. He didn't laugh back. "You're serious?" I asked. "Why not? It's just a kiss. Friends do dares like that all the time." "Friends." Right. My heart was pounding hard enough that I was sure he could hear it. This was Oliver. My best friend. The guy who'd slept on the hospital chair when I got my appendix out. The guy who knew every embarrassing story about me. Kissing him wasn't part of the plan. Ever. "You're insane," I muttered. Scared? He shot back immediately. And there it was. The hook. The trap. Oliver knew exactly which buttons to press. I'm not scared. Then prove it. The room felt smaller. The TV was still playing in the background, some dramatic music swelling as a contestant cried over a breakup. It felt almost ironic. This is stupid, I said. Yeah, he agreed. It is. Neither of us moved. I should have shut it down right there. Told him it wasn't funny. That it blurred lines we couldn't unblur. But a part of me, the reckless, curious, maybe slightly self-destructive part, wanted to know. Not if he'd feel something. If I would survive it. Fine, I said finally. One kiss. His eyebrows lifted slightly, like he hadn't expected me to agree that easily. Okay, he said. Neither of us seemed to know how to start. We'd hugged before. Wrestled around like idiots. Sat shoulder to shoulder on the same couch dozens of times. But this was different. He stood up first. I followed, slower. We were close now. Close enough that I could see the faint scar on his chin from when he crashed his bike in high school. Close enough to smell his cologne. This proves nothing, he muttered, almost to himself. Sure, I replied. My chest felt tight. 3 seconds? He asked. 3, I agreed. He hesitated. There it was again. Then he stepped forward. And before I had time to rethink every decision that led me here, Oliver lifted his hand, cupped the back of my neck, and kissed me. And the worst part? It didn't feel like a joke. It felt like a mistake we were both about to make twice. The first thing I noticed was how warm his hand was. The second was that he didn't hesitate once his lips touched mine. I expected awkward. I expected stiff. I expected the kind of half-second peck you give your grandma on Christmas. This wasn't that. His mouth pressed against mine with surprising certainty. Not aggressive. Not soft either. Just intentional. For half a second, my brain lagged behind my body. Then everything hit at once. The weight of his palm at the back of my neck. The faint scrape of his stubble against my skin. The way his breath hitched, barely, but I felt it. 3 seconds. That was the deal. 1. My hands hovered uselessly at my sides. I didn't dare touch him. It already felt like too much. 2. He adjusted slightly. It was small, almost subconscious, but his lips moved. Not pulling away. Not freezing. Moving. 3. I should have stepped back. He should have stepped back. Neither of us did. Instead, the kiss deepened by accident. Or maybe not by accident at all. His grip tightened just a little at my neck. My hand finally reacted on instinct, landing on his waist to steady myself. The contact sent a shock straight through me. He inhaled sharply against my mouth. That's when he pulled away. Not abruptly. Not violently. Just slowly. Like he wasn't sure which version of himself he was supposed to be right now. We stood there inches apart, breathing the same air. Well? I asked, my voice lower than I meant it to be. He didn't answer right away. His eyes were darker. Not angry. Not disgusted. Focused. That doesn't count, he said finally. My stomach dropped. What? You moved. I barely. You moved, he repeated, jaw tight. It threw me off. I blinked at him. You're kidding. I said 3 seconds. That was messy. Messy. The word hung between us. You're backing out, I said quietly. His eyes snapped to mine. I'm not backing out. Then what are you doing? He ran a hand through his hair, pacing once like he needed distance. It wasn't controlled. It's a kiss, not a lab experiment. Exactly, he shot back. You're supposed to just stand there. You literally pulled me closer. I did not. You absolutely did. We were arguing again. Normal. Familiar. Except my lips still tingled. except his breathing still wasn't steady. He stopped pacing and looked at me like he was trying to solve a math problem. Again, he said. I stared at him. You're serious? One more. Properly this time. You just don't want to admit you felt something. I didn't, he said immediately. Too immediate. So why do it again? His jaw clenched. Because I don't lose bets. There it was. Stubborn. Competitive Oliver. But there was something underneath it now. Something that didn't look like pride. It looked like confusion. This is stupid, I muttered again. Then walk away. He didn't mean it as a challenge. That's what made it harder. Because now it wasn't about ego. It was about choice. And I didn't walk away. 3 seconds, I said quietly. He stepped closer again, slower this time. No smirk. No teasing. Just tension. He lifted his hand again, more carefully, like he'd thought about it. His thumb brushed lightly under my ear before settling at my neck. That small touch alone almost wrecked me. This proves nothing, he murmured again. Sure, I replied. And then he kissed me. This time, I didn't freeze. I let myself feel it. His lips were softer than I expected. Warmer. He didn't rush. Didn't press too hard. 1. His thumb shifted slightly against my skin. 2. My hand came up without thinking, gripping his shirt near his waist. He made a low sound, barely audible, but it wasn't neutral. 3. He exhaled into my mouth. And instead of pulling away, he kissed me back harder. Not dramatically. Not like in some over-the-top movie scene. Just enough to make it undeniably real. His other hand came up, fingers brushing my jaw. My pulse was out of control. I could feel it everywhere. When he finally broke the kiss, it was sudden. Like he'd shocked himself. He stepped back quickly this time. We just stared at each other. The room felt completely different now. Smaller. Charged. Well? I asked again, but my voice wasn't steady. He swallowed. I didn't hate it, he said. The honesty hit harder than I expected. That wasn't the bet, I said quietly. He looked down at the floor for a second. Then back at me. It didn't feel wrong. That was worse. Worse than. I liked it. Worse than. I felt something. Because Oliver didn't do gray areas. He was black and white. Yes or no. Win or lose. And right now, he was standing in the middle of something he clearly didn't understand. So? I pushed gently. What does that mean? He laughed once under his breath, but it wasn't amused. It means you're still annoying. That's not an answer. He walked past me toward the kitchen, grabbing a bottle of water like he desperately needed something normal to hold on to. It means, he said slowly, not looking at me, that maybe you got in my head. Trevor, he cut in, finally facing me again. You don't just get to rewrite who I am because of one stupid bet. I'm not trying to. Good. Silence fell again. But it wasn't the same silence as before. This one was loaded. He set the bottle down on the counter without drinking from it. I'm still straight, he said. The way he said it sounded less like a fact and more like something he needed to convince himself of. I nodded. Okay. He looked almost disappointed at how easily I accepted that. Okay? He repeated. What do you want me to say? I don't know, he admitted. That was new. Oliver not knowing. I stepped a little closer cautiously. It was just a kiss. He let out a breath. Yeah. But neither of us believed that anymore. Because if it was just a kiss, why were his hands still slightly shaking? And why did I have the overwhelming feeling that this wasn't the end of the bet? It was the beginning of something neither of us had rules for. The weirdest part wasn't the kiss. It was what happened after. Oliver didn't make a joke about it. He didn't act grossed out. He didn't bring it up again at all. And that was way more unsettling. Normally, if something awkward happened between us, we'd tear it apart immediately. turn it into sarcasm, roast each other until it didn't feel serious anymore. But the rest of that night, he just acted normal. Too normal. We finished the episode. He argued about something a contestant said. I argued back. We ordered pizza. Talked about work. Memes. Weekend plans. Like nothing had happened. Except every once in a while, I'd catch him looking at me. Not long. Just a second too long before he'd look away. And when the pizza came, our fingers brushed, grabbing the same slice. He pulled his hand back like he'd touched a hot stove. That was the moment I knew this wasn't over. The next few days were strange. Not distant. Not awkward. Just aware. We still texted. Still hung out. Still made fun of each other. But there was this new layer under everything. Like both of us were hyper-conscious of space. Of touch. Of eye contact. On Sunday afternoon, we were at the gym together. We'd been going for years. Same routine. Same dumb competition about who could lift more, run faster, finish first. That day, Oliver was distracted. He kept checking his phone. Missing reps, zoning out between sets. You good? I asked, wiping sweat from my neck. Yeah, he said too quickly. You've been staring at that wall for 5 minutes. I'm resting. You finished your set 2 minutes ago. He gave me a look. You timing me now? I'm timing the weirdness. He shook his head, but he didn't argue. We moved to the benches. I was spotting him while he pressed. Normally he'd talk through the whole thing. Trash talk. Ask me to count louder. Something. This time he was quiet. Halfway through the set, his eyes flicked up to mine. And held. It threw me off enough that I almost missed the last rep. When he sat up, breathing hard, he didn't reach for the water bottle right away. Instead, he said, "That night." There it was. I kept my voice neutral. Yeah? He looked down at his hands. It didn't mean anything. I nodded. Okay. Silence. Then he frowned slightly. You're just going to agree? What do you want me to say? I don't know, he admitted. There it was again. That uncertainty. It was a bet, I said carefully. We did the bet. And you won. I didn't say that. You don't have to. He grabbed his water and took a long drink like he needed time to think. Then, quieter, he said, I keep thinking about it. My heart did something uncomfortable. Thinking about what? I asked. He hesitated. The part where it didn't feel weird. That landed heavier than anything he'd said before. I didn't answer right away. Because if I spoke too fast, I might say something that would change everything. And part of me still wasn't sure if that was what he wanted. Or what I wanted. He stood up suddenly, grabbing his towel. Forget it. I didn't say anything. Exactly, he muttered. And then he walked toward the locker room. Things shifted after that. Not dramatically. Just closer. He started sitting nearer when we watched stuff. Our shoulders touching more often. Not moving away right away. Once, he fell asleep on the couch and his head ended up against my shoulder. Normally, he would have jerked away the second he woke up. That time, he stayed there for a few seconds. Like he was testing how it felt. Like he was waiting to see if I'd move first. I didn't. Neither did he. The real turning point happened the following Friday. We were out with friends. Nothing special. Just drinks, loud music, the usual crowd. Oliver was getting attention like always. Some girl kept talking to him near the bar. Laughing at everything he said. Touching his arm. I tried not to watch. I failed. At one point, she leaned in and kissed his cheek. Something tight twisted in my chest. I told myself it was nothing. That this was normal. That he was straight. That this whole thing was in my head. An hour later, he showed up next to me outside the bar. Alone. What happened to your friend? I asked. He shrugged. She went back inside. That was quick. Yeah. Silence stretched between us. The night air was cool, quieter out here. Then he said, "It felt wrong." I blinked. "What did?" "When she kissed me." I stared at him. He was looking straight ahead, hands in his pockets, jaw tight. "Why?" I asked carefully. He hesitated for a long moment. Then he said it. "Because it didn't feel like that night." My pulse spiked. "Oliver, I'm not saying anything," he cut in quickly. "I'm just saying." He stopped. Struggled for the words. "That I keep comparing everything to it," he finished quietly. The noise from inside the bar felt far away now. Neither of us moved. Neither of us joked. Neither of us knew what the hell this was anymore. Then he looked at me. Not confused this time. Not defensive. Just honest. And he said, barely above a whisper, "I think we messed up that bet." I didn't answer him right away. Because he was right. We had messed up the bet. Not because of the kiss itself, but because either of us had treated it like a joke after that. We stood outside the bar, the music thumping through the walls behind us, people laughing somewhere down the street. Normal Friday night noise. And then there was us. Oliver shifted his weight, like he was uncomfortable in his own body. "I shouldn't have said that," he muttered. "You already did," I replied. "Yeah." Silence again. He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I'd seen 1,000 times before exams, job interviews, anything that made him unsure. "I don't know what's going on with me," he said finally. That was the most honest thing I'd ever heard him admit. "You don't have to figure it out tonight," I said. He nodded, but he didn't look relieved. I don't want things to be weird between us." "They're already weird," I said gently. He huffed out a quiet laugh. "Yeah, they are." Another pause. Then he asked, "Did it mean something to you?" The question hit harder than I expected. Because I could lie. I could protect the friendship. Keep it safe. Keep it simple. But Oliver had just been honest with me. So I took a breath. "Yeah," I said. He swallowed. "More than the bet?" "Yeah." He looked down at the sidewalk for a long moment. When he looked back up, there was no panic in his face. Just something thoughtful. Careful. "That's what I was afraid of," he said. That stung. But his voice wasn't rejecting. It sounded like he was afraid of hurting me. "I'm not asking you to be anything you're not," I said. "I know. I'm not expecting anything." "I know," he repeated. Then, quieter. "That's what makes it harder." We left the bar early. Neither of us was in the mood to go back inside and pretend everything was normal. The walk back to his apartment was quiet, but not awkward. Just heavy. Like both of us were thinking too much and saying too little. When we got inside, he kicked off his shoes and headed straight to the kitchen. "You want water?" he asked automatically. "Yeah." He handed me a bottle, our fingers brushing. Neither of us pulled away this time. We stood there in the kitchen, too close, either moving. "I keep replaying it," he said quietly. "The kiss?" He nodded. "Why?" I asked. He took a breath. "Because I can't figure out why it felt familiar." That word landed somewhere deep in my chest. "Familiar?" I repeated. Like it wasn't the first time I'd thought about it. I didn't speak. Because that wasn't small. That wasn't curiosity. That was something he'd been carrying longer than either of us realized. He leaned back against the counter, staring at the floor. "I've always known you're attractive," he admitted. I blinked. "That's a new sentence." "I'm serious," he said, glancing up. "I just never let myself go past that thought." "Why?" He gave me a look that said the answer was obvious. "Because you're my best friend." "Fair." "And because you're a guy," he added. "Also fair." We stood there, the space between us feeling charged again. "Do you regret it?" I asked quietly. He didn't answer immediately. Then he said, "No." My heart picked up. But I don't know what it means, he added quickly. That's okay. He studied my face for a long moment, like he was searching for pressure. Expectations? Anything that would make this heavier. I don't want to lose you, he said. You won't. You don't know that. I do. He nodded slowly. Then his eyes dropped to my mouth. It was subtle. But I saw it. And he knew I saw it. Oliver, I said carefully. Yeah? If we do anything again, it can't be another experiment. He went very still. Why? He asked. Because I can't be your test. The words hung there. He didn't look defensive. He looked like that mattered to him. I wouldn't do that, he said quietly. You kind of already did. He winced slightly. Fair. I'm not asking you to decide anything tonight, I continued. But if something happens again, it has to be because you want it. Not because you're trying to figure yourself out. He nodded. Slow. Serious. I get that. We were standing very close now. Neither of us had moved away. Neither of us seemed to want to. You're not helping, you know, he murmured. Helping what? This whole figuring things out thing. Why? Because every time you're this close, he said quietly, I stop thinking clearly. My pulse jumped. You can step back, I said. He didn't. Instead, he said, Do you want me to? I didn't answer right away. Because this wasn't a bet anymore. This wasn't a dare. This was choice. No, I said. That was all it took. Oliver closed the distance slowly this time. No hesitation. No countdown. His hand came up to my jaw, thumb resting lightly against my cheek. And when he kissed me, it wasn't testing. It wasn't careful. It was deliberate. And this time, either of us pretended it was only going to last 3 seconds. Part 5. The second kiss wasn't hesitant. That was the first thing that scared me. Oliver had always been confident in everything he did: sports, school, conversations, decisions. But with this, I expected uncertainty. Carefulness. Instead, he kissed me like he'd already decided something. His hand stayed on my jaw, steady, grounding. When my hands came up to his waist this time, he didn't flinch. He leaned into it. And that small shift, that willingness, sent something warm and dangerous through my chest. This wasn't curiosity anymore. This was him choosing to stay. The kiss deepened slowly, naturally, like we were both figuring out the rhythm at the same time. No rush. No awkward pauses. Just right. When we finally pulled back, we didn't step away. We were still close. Close enough that I could feel his breathing against my face. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then Oliver let out a quiet, almost disbelieving laugh. Okay, he said under his breath. Okay, what? I asked. I definitely didn't hate that. I smiled slightly. That wasn't the standard we agreed on. He shook his head, but he was smiling too. Then the smile faded. And the thinking face came back. That was the thing about Oliver. He could go from impulsive to overthinking in seconds. He stepped back this time, running both hands through his hair. I need to be honest with you, he said. My stomach tightened. That sounds dangerous. I'm serious. I nodded. Okay. He paced once across the kitchen, then back. I don't know what this makes me. There it was. Not panic. Not rejection. Identity. I don't need a label, I said quietly. I know you don't. But I do. That made sense. Oliver liked categories. Clear answers. Defined lines. And right now, he continued, everything feels blurry. I leaned back against the counter, giving him space. So what part is blurry? I asked. He stopped pacing. You, he said. That caught me off guard. Me? Yeah. Because when I think about guys in general, it's nothing. No interest. No curiosity. He hesitated. But when it's you, He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. That hit deeper than any dramatic confession would have. Oliver, I said carefully, that's actually more normal than you think. He looked at me, skeptical. Having exactly one exception? Sometimes attraction isn't about categories. Sometimes it's just about the person. He considered that. I don't suddenly want to date men, he said. I'm not asking you to. But I keep wanting to kiss you, he admitted. My pulse jumped again. That's pretty specific, I said. He huffed a quiet laugh. Yeah. That's the problem. Silence settled again, but this one felt different. Less tense. More honest. Then he asked the question I knew was coming. Are you okay with that? I didn't answer immediately. Because that question mattered. Okay with what? I asked. Whatever this is, he said. If I'm still figuring it out. If I don't have answers yet. I thought about it. About the risk. About how easily this could go wrong. But I also thought about the way he'd been looking at me tonight. Not curious. Not experimenting. Careful. Like I mattered. Yeah, I said finally. I'm okay with that. Relief washed over his face so quickly it almost hurt to see. Really? Yeah. But there's one rule. He straightened slightly. What rule? No disappearing if this gets confusing. I wouldn't. You already tried to pretend the first kiss didn't happen. He winced. Fair. And no treating this like a phase you're going to grow out of next week. His expression shifted, more serious now. I wouldn't do that to you, he said quietly. I believed him. That was the dangerous part. We stood there for a moment, the air calmer now. Then Oliver said, almost casually, So, what happens now? I raised an eyebrow. That sounded like a serious question. It is. I thought for a second. Well, I said, normally when two people keep kissing, they go on a date. He stared at me. You're asking me out? He said. I'm suggesting a logical next step. He ran a hand over the back of his neck, nervous again. I've never been on a date with a guy. You've also never made out with one in your kitchen. Good point. Another pause. Then, slowly. Okay. My heart skipped. Okay? Yeah, he said. A date. There was something cautious in his voice. But also something steady. Then he added, But if you make this weird, I'm blaming you. I laughed. You kissed me first. You agreed to the bet. You suggested the bet. We were smiling again. Normal. Easy. But underneath it, something had shifted. Because this wasn't a bet anymore. This wasn't confusion. This was Oliver, my stubborn, competitive, very straight best friend, agreeing to take me on our first real date. And judging by the way he was still standing too close, I had a feeling the complicated part was just getting started. Our first date was awkward. Not painfully awkward. Just the kind where both people are trying too hard to act normal. Oliver picked a small restaurant near campus. Nothing fancy, but not our usual takeout and couch routine either. That alone made it feel different. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at the table, tapping his fingers lightly against his water glass. When he saw me, he stood up. That was new. You didn't have to get up, I said, smiling as I sat across from him. I know, he said. Then, after a second, this feels like something you're supposed to do. I laughed. You've been on dates before. Yeah. But not like this. That honesty again. That was becoming his thing. We ordered. Made small talk. Work, classes, the usual. But every once in a while, the conversation would stall, and we'd both just look at each other like we were remembering why we were actually there. At one point, the waiter asked, Together or separate checks? Oliver answered immediately. Together. Then he glanced at me like he wasn't sure if that was the right move. It's a date, he added, almost defensively. I figured, I said. He relaxed a little after that. The real shift happened after dinner. We walked back toward his apartment slowly, either of us in a rush. The night was cool, quiet. Halfway down the block, our hands brushed. We both noticed. Neither of us pulled away. A few steps later, his fingers moved slightly. Testing. I turned my hand just enough for our fingers to lace together. He inhaled softly. But he didn't let go. We walked the rest of the way like that. And for someone who'd never even considered holding a guy's hand before, Oliver didn't look uncomfortable. He looked thoughtful. Like he was memorizing how it felt. Back at his apartment, the energy shifted again. Dates have that moment. The quiet pause. The unspoken question. We stood just inside the door, still close, hands still loosely connected. "So," he said. "So," I echoed. "That wasn't weird." "No," I agreed. Another pause. Then he said something that caught me off guard. "I didn't feel like I was pretending." That landed deeper than anything else tonight. Because that had been my biggest fear. That this was curiosity. That he was performing something he thought he should feel. But this sounded real. He stepped closer. Slowly. No rush. No pressure. "Can I ask you something?" he said. "Yeah. If this keeps going." He hesitated. "Does it have to change everything?" "What do you mean?" "Our friendship," he said. "I don't want to lose that part." "You won't," I said. "But it will be different." He nodded slowly. "I think I'm okay with different." That was the moment I knew he wasn't just experimenting anymore. He was choosing the uncertainty. Choosing me. He lifted his hand to my face, more confident now than he'd been the night of the bet. When he kissed me this time, it wasn't tentative. It was slow. Warm. Familiar already. And when I stepped closer, he didn't hesitate. His arms came around my waist naturally, pulling me in. The contact was solid. Grounding. Like he'd stopped second-guessing whether he was allowed to want this. We broke the kiss after a few seconds, but neither of us moved away. His forehead rested lightly against mine. "This is definitely your fault," he murmured. I smiled. "You made the bet. You said yes. You kissed me first." He huffed a quiet laugh. Then softer. "I'm really glad I did." We ended up on the couch after that. Not rushing anything. Just sitting close, his arm around my shoulders, my head leaning against him. At one point, he absently traced circles on my arm while we talked. Small, unconscious touches. The kind people only do when they're comfortable. When they're not thinking about it anymore. After a while, he went quiet. "You okay?" I asked. "Yeah." But he didn't sound distracted. He sounded thoughtful again. "What?" I asked. He hesitated. Then, "I don't think this is about the bet anymore." My chest tightened slightly. "Yeah," I said. "I figured." He looked down at me. "This is about you." That hit harder than any dramatic confession. Because Oliver didn't do big speeches. He did simple truth. "And I don't think I want to stop," he added quietly. I met his eyes. "Then don't." He nodded. And then he pulled me closer. Not like he was testing anything. Not like he was still figuring it out. But like he'd finally stopped asking himself whether he was allowed to want this. And started asking what would happen if he didn't let it go. Things didn't explode into some dramatic relationship overnight. That's probably the part people wouldn't expect. There was no big moment where Oliver suddenly said, "I'm your boyfriend now." No sudden personality shift. It happened slowly. Naturally. Like we were already close, and this was just another layer settling into place. The first real change was the way he touched me. Not the obvious stuff. The small things. His hand at the back of my neck when he walked past me in the kitchen. His knee pressing against mine when we sat on the couch. His arm automatically going around my shoulders when we were out with friends. At first, he'd look at me afterward, like he was checking my reaction. After a few days, he stopped checking. It just became normal. 2 weeks after our first date, we were at a friend's birthday party. Same group we'd known for years. Same loud apartment, cheap drinks, crowded kitchen. Oliver stayed close to me most of the night, which wasn't unusual. We'd always moved like a pair in social situations. But at one point, someone said something that changed the air. "Hey, Trevor." One of our friends laughed, glancing between us. "You and Oliver have been attached at the hip lately." I opened my mouth to make a joke. Oliver spoke first. "Yeah," he said simply. "Because we're together." The room went quiet for half a second. Not shocked. Just surprised. I turned to look at him. He didn't look nervous. He didn't look like he just said something experimental or temporary. He looked calm. "Certain," someone said. "Wait, seriously?" Oliver nodded. "Yeah." Then he grabbed my hand. Just like that. No hesitation. No looking around to see who noticed. That was the moment it really hit me. Not the kisses. Not the dates. This. Him choosing me out loud. Later that night, after everyone had adjusted and the conversation moved on, we ended up alone on the balcony. I was leaning against the railing, watching him. "You didn't have to do that," I said. "Do what?" "Tell everyone like that." He shrugged. "Why not? I thought you were still figuring things out." "I am." I frowned slightly. "Then why say we're together?" He stepped closer. "Because I know one thing for sure." "What?" His hand slid into mine again, natural now. "I don't want anyone thinking you're just some experiment." That hit deeper than anything else he'd said so far. "I told you," he continued quietly, "this isn't about guys. Or labels." He squeezed my hand. "This is about you." That night, back at his apartment, things were quieter than usual. Not tense. Just full. Like something important had settled between us. We were sitting on the couch, my legs stretched across his lap, his hand resting absently on my ankle. After a while, he spoke. "I've been thinking. That's always dangerous," I said. He ignored that. "I don't think I'm straight." I didn't say anything. Not because I didn't care. Because I didn't want to push him toward a label he wasn't ready for. He glanced at me. "I also don't think I'm suddenly into guys in general." "That's okay," I said. He nodded slowly. "I think I'm just into you." Simple. Honest. Very Oliver. He leaned forward and kissed me then. Not intense. Not searching. Just warm and familiar. The kind of kiss you give someone you're already comfortable with. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. "You know what the stupidest part is?" he murmured. "What?" "If you hadn't called me out that night, I probably never would have questioned any of this." I smiled slightly. "Best bet you ever lost?" He huffed a quiet laugh. "I didn't lose." "Oh?" He pulled me closer. "I think I accidentally won." And the truth was, we had both made a stupid bet. We had both crossed a line neither of us expected. But somewhere between the arguing, the confusion, the second-guessing, and the slow, careful honesty, it stopped being about proving anything. It stopped being about curiosity. It became about the one thing neither of us had planned for. Not the kiss. Not the bet. Not the labels. Just this. My best friend. Who never meant to fall for a guy. Who never thought he would. And who, somehow, fell for me anyway. If you told me 3 months earlier that Oliver and I would end up here, I would have laughed in your face. Not because it was impossible. Because it would have sounded reckless. Dangerous. Like the kind of thing that ruins friendships. And that was my biggest fear. Not that he'd decide he wasn't into me. Not that he'd go back to being straight. But that if this fell apart, I'd lose him completely. The first real test came about a month after we started officially dating. We were in his apartment, half lazy Sunday afternoon, both pretending to work. He was quieter than usual. Not distant. Just thinking. You okay? I asked. He nodded automatically, then shook his head. Actually, no. I closed my laptop. What's going on? He leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. My mom called, he said. That alone told me this wasn't small. And? She asked if I'm seeing anyone. I stayed quiet. I didn't lie, he continued. I just said yes. My chest tightened slightly. That's good. Yeah, he exhaled. But she assumed it was a girl. There it was. The part we hadn't had to deal with yet. Friends were one thing. Casual environments were easy. Family was different. What do you want to do? I asked. He was quiet for a long time. I don't want to hide you, he said finally. That simple sentence hit harder than anything else. But I'm not ready for the full conversation either, he added. That's okay, I said. He looked at me carefully. You're not disappointed? No. Really? I don't need a public announcement, I said gently. I just need to know you're not ashamed of me. He didn't even hesitate. I'm not. And I believed him. Because Oliver wasn't good at faking that kind of thing. The second test came unexpectedly. We ran into that girl from the bar. The one who'd kissed his cheek the night everything shifted. She smiled at him like nothing had changed. Hey stranger, she said. You disappeared. Oliver didn't even glance at me first. Didn't hesitate. Yeah, he said calmly. I started seeing someone. Her eyebrows lifted. Oh? Who? And without drama, without build-up, he reached for my hand. This is Trevor. There was a flicker of surprise on her face. Then understanding. Oh? She said softly. Yeah, Oliver replied. Not defensive. Not awkward. Just steady. She recovered quickly, nodded, said something polite, and left. When we were alone again, I looked at him. You didn't have to do that so confidently, I teased lightly. He smirked. I'm competitive. That has nothing to do with this. It absolutely does, he said. I'm not losing you to my own hesitation. That was such an Oliver answer that I couldn't help laughing. But underneath it, it meant something. The last real shift happened quietly. One night, we were lying in bed. His place had unofficially become ours at this point. Lights off. Room quiet. I was half asleep when he spoke. Trevor. Yeah? He was quiet for a second. I don't feel confused anymore. I opened my eyes. What changed? He rolled onto his side, facing me in the dark. I stopped trying to figure out what this says about me. And started focusing on what it feels like. I waited. It feels right, he said simply. There was no drama in his voice. No fear. Just certainty. I don't care what that makes me, he added. I care that it's you. I reached for his hand under the blanket, squeezing it lightly. You know what the funniest part is? He murmured. What? All of this happened because I didn't want to lose a bet. I laughed softly. You definitely lost. He leaned closer, pressing his forehead to mine. No, he said quietly. I think I won the only thing that actually mattered. And for once, Oliver didn't sound competitive. He sounded sure. Looking back now, the bet feels almost ridiculous. A stupid dare between two stubborn best friends. But it forced something open. Not his orientation. Not some dramatic identity crisis. Just honesty. The kind we'd both been avoiding without realizing it. We didn't plan it. We didn't chase it. We didn't even understand it at first. But somewhere between the teasing, the tension, and the accidental second kiss, we stopped trying to prove something. And started choosing each other instead. And honestly, for the first time in my life, winning didn't matter. Keeping him did.